So today I'm going to be learning more about one of the things I find most fascinating about Australia, and that's the Outback. You know, such a unique place in the world, such a huge place as well, so sparsely populated, but so much beautiful sights as well. What is life like in the Outback? So, yeah, I guess probably varies depending on what part of the Outback it is. If you've lived there, got any experiences there that are interesting, tell me about them in the comments, but let's watch.
About 7.7 million kilometers squared, Australia is the 6th largest country on Earth and for the most part is extremely sparsely populated. Looking at a map of its population density, we can only really see a handful of urban areas.
I mean, that's the one that, like, when you actually see it like that, it's actually mind-blowing when you see somewhere like Indonesia as well here, which is so densely populated, like a population of a couple 100 million. See, I think this is Java here, like how crazy dense it is for the size of it. In Australia, just little pockets. So much, like, is a lot of this unexplored, or is it mostly explored? Is there places you just cannot get to? Even when you like look at the size of these lakes and so on, although when you look at the map of Australia, you might not think too much because you're just focusing more on the cities, but these are huge lakes and so on, huge spaces. Such an interesting place.
Excluding Perth on its west coast, most of these are concentrated on its east coast, southeast specifically. The area known as the Outback is in particular one of the least populated places not only in the country but the entire planet. Although a rather vague term in terms of its actual location, the Outback is generally this region here. It's an almost lifeless, remote, vast region which covers around 70% of the entire country, or about 5.5 million kilometers squared. As the boundaries of the region aren't set in stone, there is no exact measurement for how many people actually live in what is known as the Outback. But why do people actually live here? What is the largest settlement and what is life like there? Let's travel into the desert and find out. So before we investigate what life is like there, let's take a quick look at the history of the Aboriginals and why and when they migrated to Australia. So Aboriginal Australians have lived in the Outback for over 50,000 years. They originally migrated from Southeast Asia using very simple boats to reach Australia. Over time, they spread out across the country, adapting to the extreme conditions of the Outback. One of those regions being what is now known as the town of Alice Springs, perhaps the most well-known city in the Outback. It is also the most populated, with around 29,000 people calling the city home. So this is where the city is located.
I mean, it's quite interesting in itself that this town, which is the most populated in that whole area, just so happens to be pretty much dead centre. I wonder, like, how did that happen to be? Why would it not be somewhere else? You think that's like the most extreme place you could choose to make a town, but yeah, I'm sure they'll probably go into it. But if you've got any theories on why it just happened to be there, maybe it's near a water source or something, I don't know. But and yeah, if you've lived there, if you've been there, tell me what it's like.
Somewhat in the middle of the country. It's roughly a 29-hour drive away from Sydney or Perth, or a 15-hour drive from Darwin/Adelaide. So the city is found just a little north of Lambert Centre, which is recognised as the official geographical centre point of the country. Now, when I searched for it on Google Maps, I thought it was just down the road, maybe an hour away max. But no, it turns out it's over 5 hours drive away, even though on a map it looks relatively close. The same.
See, that's the thing. I feel like you could probably drive from one end of Scotland to the bottom end of Scotland in 5 hours, and that's just that small.
Applies to Uluru or Ayers Rock, which on a map looks like it's just around the corner, but in fact it's again about a 5-hour drive away. So this is what the city actually looks like. It's a very small suburban town with low-rise buildings against a backdrop of rugged red desert landscapes. There are no tall buildings, nothing flashy or particularly stand out, just a sea of green trees and houses amongst the Martian-like scenery. The city is part of the Northern Territory and is actually the region's second most populated city, only behind Darwin. showing just how low the population of the territory is if a city with 29,000 ranks second. For reference, the next largest city is Catherine with just 6,000 people. In fact, the entire territory's population is around 232,000. Found roughly 7 hours drive south of Alice Springs, we arrive in Coober Pedy, a town found in the northern part of South Australia. The town is extremely unique and somewhat bizarre. It's a town where around half of its inhabitants are extremely unique and some.
What is this thing? Is that some sort of like Star Wars ship or something like that? I wonder if maybe like they did some filming or something like that here, because it's got that sort of Mars, is like some colony set up on Mars just because of the colour of the ground and so on. Very interesting place.
What bizarre. It's a town where around half of its inhabitants live underground. As you'd expect from this region, the climate can be absolutely unbearable.
I mean, just kind of brushed over that, but yeah, I had no idea this place existed. I've not seen that mentioned on any other video, that there's a place that so many people live underground. That's quite crazy.
Live underground. As you'd expect from this region, the climate can be absolutely unbearable. In the summer, it regularly sees temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius, and the highest temperature ever recorded there was 48 degrees Celsius. So for this reason, around half of its 1,800 population live in dugouts, which are essentially underground houses where temperatures are much cooler and livable. The town is primarily known for its opal mining, which is the field most of its residents work in. However, in recent years, it's gained traction due to its uniqueness, creating a small but steady tourism industry. As well as homes, there is a church, hotel, restaurant, and museums found underground within the city. Now, when you think of the outback or deserts in general, you don't necessarily think of water or lakes for that matter. However, within the outback is where you'll find Australia's largest lake, Lake Eyre. During times of storms or heavy rainfall, the lake can cover an area of some 9,500 kilometers squared, a larger area than that of the country of Cyprus. But for most of the year, the lake is dry due to the arid climate of the region. So why and how does this body of water exist in the first place? Well, this is due to the fact that the lake is part of what is known as a closed drainage basin. Basically, if there is water, it has nowhere else to go but this lake. The lake then collects this water, and then it eventually dries up in the heat of the summer. It's kind of crazy that the outback is so large that it touches almost every state in the country. It of course isn't in Tasmania, as that's an island state with a more temperate climate which is lush and green. There are parts of Victoria that are semi-arid, but generally none of Victoria is considered to be part of the outback. And then there is ACT, which is the Australian Capital Territory, a tiny region that encompasses the capital Canberra, located much further southeast. Like Tasmania, has more of a temperate climate. Now, when you think of Queensland, Australia, what pops into your head? For me, I instantly think of tropical rainforests. However, that only covers around 10% of the state, and in fact about 80% is arid desert / the outback. Within this 80% we have Boulia, a town with a population of only around 300. This is what it looks like. Again, similar to Alice Springs, it's a town full of detached low-rise buildings with not much going on and a red Martian-like background. There is one unique thing that goes on in this town, however, which is what it's nationally known for. So every year in the third week of July, it hosts Australia's national camel races. It's a 3-day event where people race on camels over a distance of 1,500 meters. The record of which is 2 minutes and 45 seconds, which is actually only 43 seconds faster than the human record. Found around 5 hours drive north of Alice Springs is Tennant Creek Airport, one of the country's smallest airports. Over the course of a year, maybe 10,000 people may use it. That's somewhere in the region of around 30 people per day. But who exactly is using an airport like this in the middle of absolute nowhere? Well, other than the residents of the nearby town of Tennants Creek, you may have the odd tourist, mine worker, or government official. Now, as small as this airport is in terms of passenger numbers, it's actually got nothing on Biduri Airport found in Queensland. This airport typically sees around 1 to 200 passengers per year, seeing only around 40 to 50 flights for the entire year. Again, the only people who may use the airport are the odd tourist, government officials, and the residents of the nearby town Biduri, a town.
It was just interesting when they have like a race course there. Like, it seems like, again, so remote, but for it to have a race course, that must have some sort of like importance or something. I guess, is this for like training, or a place to train horses, or is it for horse racing? I don't even know actually what kind of racing goes on here. Maybe it's car racing, I don't know. Tell me more about that. But you actually see the size of the town and the runway here, how big it is. Very, very
With a population of only around 150 people. The town itself is of course absolutely tiny. However, the locality around the town covers an area of some 36,000 kilometers squared. That's larger than around 60 countries around the world. The town sits in the southwest of Queensland, not far from its border with South Australia and Northern Territory. It is found within the Simpson Desert, a region of Earth that pretty much looks like Mars. It's filled with rolling dunes of red sand and seemingly never-ending landscapes. Although most of the outback is generally very hot and in the summer almost unlivable, the sub-region of the outback often regarded as the hottest is Pilbara, an area of around 500,000 kilometers squared, found in the northwest of the country, Western Australia specifically. Around 50,000 people live in this region, giving a density of roughly 0.1 people per kilometers squared. An extremely sparsely populated region where most people work in what is known as FIFO, fly in, fly out. This is people who quite literally fly in, work solidly for around 2 weeks, and then fly back to have a week off, repeating throughout the year. The region consists of mainly rocky, barren land that absorbs heat during the day and then releases it in the night, meaning it's hard to ever escape the heat. Within this region is Onslow, a town which saw Australia's highest ever recorded temperature at 50.7 degrees in January of 2022. However, Onslow is actually found on the coast and is not classed as being part of the outback. It's a town where only around 800 people live. One particular point of interest in Australia, which mainly runs through the outback, is the Dingo Fence, the longest fence on Earth. It runs for some 5,600 kilometers. As the name suggests, it's a fence to keep dingoes out, which are wild dogs that roam the country. The fence was initially planned to be around 1,100 kilometers long, but then was gradually extended over time. By the early 1900s, it reached its final length of 5,600 kilometers, stretching from northwest of Brisbane through the outback and ending on the coast of South Australia. Like and subscribe for more content like this, and as always, thank you.
Such a good video, and I'm sure there's probably a lot more interesting things about the outback, but that was just, yeah, really like one of the most unique places in the world. So when you see like that last one, when there's like 1 person or 0.1 person per kilometre squared, how sparse that is. Must be, yeah, again, there must be parts of that it's just never seen a person walk over the land there. Like, it's quite amazing. Yeah, tell me what you like about the outback. How many times have you been? What's other interesting facts or information about it? Tell me more about them. Yeah, thanks.